This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
So, I was scrolling Instagram yesterday and Cory Wong popped up. Now, Cory Wong, really great player, I think that's important to say, and also really great attitude in general. And I would say, in general, he's not particularly gatekeepy. So I think just take what he said in this video as sort of just pointing you in a direction rather than sort of judgy, I would guess. Anyway, so he said if you can't do this, then you're not an advanced guitarist in his opinion.
If you can't do this exercise, I would not consider you an advanced guitarist, because you should know where all the notes are on the guitar. Play me a C on every string. Can you play me a G on every string? B flat on every string. Get to work, peace.
And what he's talking about is, he called it like note location. I guess you call it, you know, knowing the note names on the fretboard. Now, this is a thing that is actually, as you'll be well aware if you're a guitarist, it's not straightforward. This isn't a piano. And the thing is, you've got like 6 strings, 12 notes that kind of don't really line up that well. So the exercise that he, and I can sort of tell that it's an exercise that he's done because he does it in a repetitive way. And here's the thing, I think the fretboard sort of encourages us to learn patterns and recognize patterns and stuff like that. So in this video, I'm going to kind of discuss these note name things. So say you started off on C. I'm going to guess that where you, probably like me, know your note names best is along this string, because you've done this sort of thing. So we're going to G, F to C. So we're normally pretty good on this string, and we normally know that this string mirrors that, right? C, G, F. So we kind of got these two covered already most of the time, right? I think most of us would be there. Then this string also, we generally are pretty good with our note names because we've done this on this string. So you get a C here, a C here. Then we generally know that if you jump up an octave, you kind of get this little formation here where you jump 2 frets. So I'm going to guess that most of us are kind of there, right? So if I said to you a G, there's a G, there's a G, there's a G, and there's a G. Like those ones probably, I think, illuminate pretty well. What about like a B flat over that, B flat? I'm not getting tripped up by that at all. What about like a G flat? Right, so let's keep moving on. So we got a C here, we got a C here, a C here. So where are we going to find a C on the G string? Here? Okay, so that could be one way that we do it. So you're now looking at pairs of octaves. Yeah, so you've got jump up the octave again. Would that be a valid way to see things? Then we have a fall back down towards this one. So you get a C up here and a C here and back down. So that's one way that we could kind of view these octaves. And then if I did G, 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 and then back down to the G. What about like an E? E. 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 What about an A? A. 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 So, just again, in terms of note names, like I say, I think you're going to probably be fairly okay if you've been playing a while on these strings. You'll probably be aware of this octave, and you'll probably be aware of like where the note will be on this A string, and probably even maybe on this D string, because you're quite used to the idea of octaves. So just join up that octave and then this one, which kind of happens in that gap like that. So another thing, instead of just making an exercise, so here's an F, 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 F. Instead of it being like that, what you might want to do is kind of slow it down, and I would recommend probably in regards to this, getting a bit further down the rabbit hole and going beyond. Maybe even consider Tom Quayle and David Beebe solo. David Beebe is a good friend of mine. He's gone down the rabbit hole of actually kind of starting to think about intervals off of a root note and visualizing the fretboard that way, which is kind of taking this idea and running with it and starting to see geometry on the fretboard and that sort of stuff. But so we got our F here, F, F, the big jump F, and then back. So we're kind of climbing and then falling, right? Another thing worth doing probably is try and stay in the same place on the fretboard, because generally you're not going to be doing this sort of thing whilst you're playing, right? So maybe trying to find all the Fs that are around here. So am I in reach of an F on the A string? No. I am on this string, right? Is there an F anywhere else? Here. And I can probably just about reach here. So where the ones that are out of reach are here. And then here. So think about it in that kind of way. So then equally, if I started up here, where are my Fs that are in reach? So I've got this one. That's kind of in reach. Here's one that's in reach. So instead of it just being like a flat thing where you're going, right, can I play C, and I do the same thing every time, start to think about moving. There's a B, right. Around the fretboard in this kind of way. What about like a D now? And maybe don't always start on the same string. So if you know there's a D here, where if my gap in my knowledge is kind of like the D and the G string, well, okay. Is that a D? Yes. D, D, there's a D. There's a D, there's a D, there's a D. Here's a D, I think. Yeah, D. And start to fill the gaps in that way. And again, like I say, so instead of it now always going up, so this is what I was doing, going up the fretboard, D, 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 and then back down. What if we went this direction? There's a D, 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 there's a D. So now I'm thinking, right, I'm going to go down the fretboard. So I could go up. So this is just octave intervals, right? Okay. There's a D. There's an open D. There's a D. Viewing that off of that octave there. There's another D. There's a D. this is not necessarily something that I've spent a whole lot of time doing either, to be honest with you, but I think he might have a point. Like, it's probably a good idea to try and get hold of some of these concepts. As I said with the David Beebe thing and Tom Quayle with the solo, once you're here and once you've got some level of confidence that you could hit an F all over the fretboard, then I think it becomes less about this as an exercise, because this doesn't actually, I don't think, it's not going to take you super long to actually get a hang of this. You know, if you're, do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem to me to be the sort of thing it's going to take ages. Let's just move into a different key. Let's try A flat. So now I want to find, say, like the 5th of A flat, E flat all over the fretboard. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to fall down the fretboard, E flat. There's an E flat as well, right? There's an E flat there as well, right? I think. As I said, like, try this through the scale. So like A flat, I'm pretty confident I can find it on this string, and therefore that string, this string, and then also one here. It's kind of the G and the B string, which I think I'm going to find a little bit more difficult. So let's just make that like the focus. So here's an A flat, which is going to be where I visualize that. Or there's one on the G string. I can just visualize it off here, or off of this root note. So let's kind of bridge that gap in our knowledge. The A flat on the G string is going to be 3 frets below. Yeah? Right, and then on the B string, it's going to be 4 frets above. Or if we're viewing off here, 2 frets below for the, or 2 frets above. So now I'm finding them on the G and B string a bit easier. What about a D flat? So here's a D flat. Okay, off of the G string, there's one. B flat here, we've got B flat minor, so B flat I could view on this. Why is that not? It's an F minor. I'm going to do it with the B flat though. So B flat here, sorry, B flat, or so it's a gap of 1, 5 for the B. If I'm visualizing it off of this. Below, above. The E flat, again. So, I think that's probably a relatively relaxed thing that we could put into our playing like each day to, you know, help solidify our note name knowledge on the fretboard and start to think about like how it is that you're remembering where your things are. And as I say, I think for a lot of us, probably it's going to be the G and the B string that need most work, because as I say, we've probably done quite a lot of power chord type stuff. as kids, played Blink-182 and Sum 41 or whatever, or Iron Maiden, that probably finding a C on the E and the A string, or the other E string, is probably relatively easy. Jump up an octave. On the G string and the B string is probably where we need a little bit more attention. I don't know, let me know your thoughts in the comments and how you go about visualizing this particularly weird instrument. And then beyond that, I think, then starting to think a bit more about, you know, functional harmony and where intervals are in relation to these might make even more sense. So, you know, once we start to think, right, okay, well, I can visualize where my C's are all over the fretboard, well, then what? Anyway, if you liked the, I was using the Helix pads for this, just to sort of give something for myself to hear the root against and, you know, check whether I was in the right place. You can grab the Helix pads on Gumroad if you're interested in that. I'll catch you in another video soon. Hopefully that was somewhat useful for well, not just you or not just me, but like for all of us to think like A flat. Where's my A flats? There's an A flat. There's an A flat. There's an A flat. Something to work on. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Can you do that? Cheers for stopping by.